Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers are medicine men, or shamans, that have the ability to shapeshift into animals. They are incredibly fast, and can mimic the voices of other humans. Join me for 3 never-before-narrated tales about skinwalkers. The third story was told to me directly by an 87-year-old Navajo woman named Mary. Enjoy. Number 1. On a desert highway. The scariest thing I have ever seen in my life was something that I can only assume was a skinwalker. At the time, I had never heard of them before, but I think when you hear it, you'd have to agree that this is what I saw. I was 12 years old, and I was out driving with my dad. We were driving down a very long stretch of highway in Arizona. It wasn't anything special. It was just that we were from San Diego, and we were going to visit my grandma in New Mexico. Desert highways can be very, very hypnotic. Sort of like when you're driving in the snow, and you become slightly mesmerized by the falling of the snow. Well, desert highways, especially when there are not any other cars on the road, can really mess with your mind. I guarantee you that is not what happened this night. It was pretty late at night. My dad was one of those drivers who felt that making the best time was the most important thing of all. He could drive all night. I dozed off at some point, but I was woken up by an abrupt jolt by the car. My dad had slowed the car down considerably, but he had not fully stopped. When I looked in front of us, I saw why. We saw ahead of us what looked like the dead body of a bighorn sheep laying in the middle of the road. That was freaky enough, but what was worse was what was on top of the body, tearing flesh off it with its mouth. It was what looked like a very large wolf or something. My dad stopped the car, still a bit away, obviously scared of whatever it was that we saw. He began flashing his high beams at the animal, I guess in an attempt to scare it away. The flashing annoyed the animal, and when it turned to look at us, we saw that it wasn't an animal at all. It was a very large human being who was clad in wolf skins. He stared right at us, flesh and blood dripping from his mouth. Then he got up from the bighorn sheep carcass and stood up. He was hunched over, but he was still damn tall. And he began moving quickly towards us. Fortunately, my dad wasn't the type to fuck around, and he kept a gun under the driver's side seat in the car, and he grabbed it and blew a warning shot out of the window of the car. The strange man stopped immediately, and then crouched down again, as it had been doing over the sheep. Then, on all fours, it ran off at lightning speed into the desert. My dad slipped the gun onto the floor of the car and hit the gas, speeding past the sheep carcass at a dangerously illegal speed. I wanted my dad to call the police, but he told me it would be better for both of us if we just kept this incident to ourselves. He was worried people would think we were crazy. I was a kid. It didn't seem crazy to me at all. It was scary as hell, and real, and I wanted to share it, and I told a lot of people. It wasn't until very recently, though, that I had ever heard of a skinwalker. but I have no doubt that is what we saw that night. Number 2. My camping trip. Me and 2 of my best friends went camping once in western Arizona. I won't mention the campground just because I am not really sure if I should. But it was a large camping area, and we were able to hike in it for days. I was 19, and my 2 best friends, Scott and Tom, were 19 as well. None of us were the most experienced campers ever, but we had a general idea of what we were doing. For the first couple of days, everything was fine. We kept close to the creek that ran through the area. We did this so we wouldn't get lost, and also so we wouldn't be too far away from a water supply. We each had our own tents, and they were very small, so we were always able to set up our camp almost anywhere. Each night, we built a fire and set our tents around the fire in a sort of circle. On the 4th night, something woke me up really late at night. I thought that I heard Scott saying my name. Waking up, I looked through the tent over towards the fire, and I saw the shadow of what I assumed was Scott's body standing by the fire. I groggily asked him what he wanted, and rather than answer, he just said my name again. At that point, I just figured he was trying to scare me, and I told him to just go fuck off, and I turned around and quickly fell back to sleep. The following day, I asked Scott if he had problems sleeping. He told me he had slept like a rock, and wondered why I asked. I then asked why he was standing by the fire calling my name. Scott told me he had done no such thing, but I didn't believe him. Scott was the kind of guy who really liked to play jokes on people and scare people, so I really just thought he was trying to scare me. The following night, I fell asleep pretty early, and once again was woken up by what sounded like Scott saying my name. I groggily opened my eyes and looked out at the fire, and again saw what I assumed was Scott standing by the fire. But then I heard another voice, and it was very clearly Tom's voice, and he was saying Scott's name. I felt my heart jump a little before I decided that it was just Tom and Scott ganging up on me and trying to scare me. But my blood froze in my veins the next time it spoke. The third voice was calling for Tom, and it was very clearly my voice that I heard. I had no idea what to think or do. I just sat frozen in place in my tent. The shadow of the figure began growing, indicating that it was getting closer to me. It came right up upon my tent and stood there, and whatever it was freaking huge. It was leaning over my tent, and then it began to laugh. And it wasn't really just a laugh. It was a cackle, and it sounded like this. It was the evilest sound I had ever heard in my life, and it cackled over and over outside of my tent. It then moved away from me, obviously going over to Tom's tent, while still cackling. It then moved to Scott's tent, continuing its horrible laugh, and then, and I swear to God this is true, I watched the figure begin to slowly crouch over onto all fours, and then it ran away from the campsite quicker than I could ever imagine. Almost instantly, Scott and Tom rushed out of their tents, and I did too. We didn't really know what to do. I'm not too proud to say that we all jumped into the biggest of the 3 tents and huddled together until the sun came up. We didn't sleep at all, and the moment that we could see where we were going, we closed our campsite and set out of the area. We walked fast the entire day, scared to death of every sound we heard, every rustle of the leaves. We didn't stop for breaks, and we had our fear as our motivation for getting as far away as we possibly could. We couldn't make it all the way back in one day, and we had to set up camp. We once again slept in one tent, but thankfully, there was nothing that happened that night. We were able to sleep a little, but the moment it was light again, we left and got out of the campground that day. We reported what happened to the people in charge of the campsite, and they seemed concerned, but they didn't give us any information as to what it could have been. They, in fact, said it was probably a bird or something. Yeah, like I was stupid enough to believe that. If I was stupid enough to believe that, I would have been stupid enough to stay at the damn campsite. It was only later, and with research, that I found someone who had a similar experience in the area, and he had said he had experienced an encounter with a Skinwalker. It was the first time I had ever heard of it, but I was completely sure that it was exactly what I had come across. I will never get that terrifying cackle out of my head. Number 3. Desert Trailer. Many years ago, I moved into a small trailer on the Arizona side of Navajo Nation. The trailer was on a desert-like plateau, down a long country road. It had belonged to an older man who had unfortunately passed away shortly beforehand. I was able to move into it without really having to pay very much. This trailer was set close to one other, bigger trailer, but there were no other homes within miles of this place. I was in my 40s when I moved in there, and a young man lived in the other trailer. I think he was in his 20s. His name was Joseph, and he was a very kind and respectful man. He used to help me with my groceries, and he would give me rides whenever I needed them. The summers were hot, and of course we didn't have anything like air conditioning in those trailers. Many times, it was very difficult to sleep at night. The only things that made it easier were that it was cooler at night, and the air was generally very dry. Joseph always made sure that I had plenty of water. He would also make tea for me and bring it over to my trailer. I had no doubt that he was a very decent man. One night during that summer, living in that trailer, I was having trouble sleeping one night. I was laying in bed, with the window by my bed open. It was one of those windows that opened outwards, with the lever that spinned around, and it took a while to open or close it. Its screen had been broken out long before I had moved in. As I was laying in bed, I heard someone say my name. Mary. I sat up in my bed immediately. I at first thought that I may have just been hearing things. It was hot and late at night. I may have dozed off and didn't know it. I tried to brush it off and decided to lay back down. No sooner than after I closed my eyes did I once again hear someone say my name. Mary. I sat up again and looked out the window, as that was from where the voice had come from. When I looked out the small window, I saw what seemed to be a large, hunched-over figure standing off in the desert. I did not think this could have been the person who had been whispering my name, though. The person I saw was very far away and could not have run off that quickly after saying my name. Very scared and willing to deal with the heat, I quickly began to close the window, leaving it only slightly cracked. While I was looking away, I then glanced back up, and the figure was gone. I quickly ran to the door, making sure it was locked, and I braved the heat and went back to bed. I was unable to go to sleep until the sun crept up over the horizon. I just didn't feel safe. The following day, I was awoken by a knock on my door. I assumed correctly that it was Joseph. He had come to check on me because it was close to noon, and I was usually awake before then. I told him I had been having trouble sleeping. He seemed to understand, and then said to me, "Oh, is that why you were calling my name last night? I heard you whisper it a few times, but by the time I had gotten up, you weren't around. I figured you just went back to bed." I was scared at that point. I explained immediately to Joseph that I had not called out his name, and that I had first thought he had called mine out. I then explained to him about the figure I saw, and noticed the concern on his face. I asked Joseph if anything like that had ever happened there before, and it seemed like he lied to me when he told me no. However, he did tell me that if I saw something, or heard something weird again, to please not hesitate to come and get him. He then gave me a partially used smudge stick, and told me to light it if I felt I was in danger, and that it would keep evil away. I didn't believe in such things, but I took it because he was kind, and it would be polite to take it. A few nights later, I had gotten over my fright because nothing had happened since. However, that was premature of me, I suppose, because once again, in the middle of the night, I heard Joseph's voice call out, "Mary." I froze again, and it was only moments again before I heard my name, "Mary." Peeking out the window, I saw the figure again, but it wasn't as far away as it had been the previous night. But it was still so far away that it didn't make sense that it could be the voice that I heard. Frightened, I remembered the smudge stick. Again, I personally did not believe in these sort of things, but I could also not explain what was going on. I had some matches because I smoked, so I lit the smudge stick and smudged the entrances to the trailer and the windows. I left the sage burning until I fell asleep. The following day, I expected Joseph to wake me up, but he did not. Around noon, I got up and came out of my trailer. I looked over at Joseph's trailer, and I was alarmed to see the door to it was hanging open. I was scared, but still I ran over to the trailer and went inside. The entire place was ransacked. Things were broken and turned over. There had obviously been some sort of struggle. There was a strange gray fur on the furniture, and there was blood on the door. I didn't know what else to do, other than I grabbed the keys to Joseph's pickup truck, and even though I had not driven in years and had no license, drove to the closest town. I got in touch with Navajo Nation police and reported what happened. They didn't find Joseph, and I never saw him again. The police took me back to my trailer so I could gather my things, and then I called my sister, who allowed me to come stay with her. I have never been able to get the thought out of my head that what I saw that night was a skinwalker. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the button next to the tabby to be informed of new content. Please feel free to follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter as well. I hope you enjoyed these stories. I have been hesitant to tell Skinwalker stories, mainly because of respect for Navajo friends of mine. It wasn't until one of those friends who had a talk with an 87-year-old woman named Mary, who agreed to personally tell me her story, that I changed my mind. She seemed eager, and I really like talking to old people, so it was a win-win for me. I think that's why I wanted to become a storyteller, because I'm always able to listen to people tell stories about their lives. And it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to hear her tell me this story, and I hope that you enjoyed it. My Navajo friend, Robert, assured her of my respect towards her culture due to our long friendship. I want to thank Mary specifically for sharing this story exclusively with me, so I can in turn share it with you. It's been a while since I've had a true story video, and I want to apologize for that. I definitely plan on getting back to having at least 2 of these each week. I will probably add some different sorts of content as well, such as creepypastas and maybe some countdown lists, but even if I do, I will try to keep the main focus of my channel on true stories, with the rest just as supplements. And make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.